Welcome to the House of Truth. Today we're continuing our series on the Acts of Moses. Last week we had a really action-packed lesson. We saw that Moses was called up, been called up. We picked up where Moses been called up to get the written commandments on Pentecost, and was up there 40 days. And God himself carved them on the last day. In the rest of the 7 chapters were various commandments, primarily about the ark, the tabernacle, and the priesthood. We'll cover those in future, cover some of that in future lessons. But as he was the day he was supposed to come down, or the day before, the day God gave him to him, right after he gave him to him, the children of Israel, the congregation of Israel, built this golden calf. And we saw how they've been worshiping. We saw from Ezekiel 20 how they've been worshiping that in Egypt. And how God told them to separate themselves from the idols, and they apparently had never let them go. And indeed, had went back to Egypt in their heart to worship his calf. And even 1,000 years later, we still see their descendants worshiping this calf. Well, God had it with them. He was ready to wipe them off the face of the earth and start over with Moses. But Moses interceded for them, and God relented, primarily because of what the Gentiles would think if he just destroyed them. That was Moses' cornerstone of Moses' plea for leniency. And why that? Because it's always been about the Gentiles, and your nation, and your seed, all the families of the earth will be saved. And God was concerned about the Gentiles, thinking he brought them out, but he couldn't take them in. Brought them out of Egypt, couldn't take them into the promised land. So God relented on that. But then Moses went downhill, went down from the mount, saw what was going on, and in his anger, threw down the stone tablets containing the 10 commandments. So the commandments were literally broken. And then Moses proceeded to chastise them and yell those famous words. Who is on the Lord's side? It was an open call to everyone around. But only people from one tribe, that of Levi, answered the call. And they were commissioned to go kill all those all those that were naked when Moses came down, who were naked in this worship of this golden calf. And the Levites did, and we read how they killed friends, family, and neighbors. In fact, we looked at in a little more detail the family aspect that included their own parents, their own siblings, their own children. And for this reason, God promised to reward them. But he wasn't done yet. But he's still angry. Moses is angry too. But Moses, after I think perhaps that will buy some appeasement from God, went back and pled with God again to have mercy on them. Now he's seen how bad it was himself, and said, and said, if you're not going to forgive them, blot my name out of the book of life, out of the book, meaning the book of life. And God said, he would, the one who sins will die. His name will be blotted out. But he did say he would forbear. He would forbear bringing their iniquity upon them till later. Okay, till later. He'd visit them later for this. And Moses returned. He showed he meant business by sending a plague. As we learned, that killed 20,000 of them. Now, that reward of the Levites we saw was they became workers in the temple, collecting the tithes, helping with the priest, a job that had been that instead of the firstborn. It had been the firstborn's job. And we'd seen before how there were priests before the Aaronic priesthood was ever set up, and how they, and they just built simple stone altars and so on and so forth. And those priests were the firstborn of every family. But now they've been replaced by the Aaronic by the Levites in the job of helping in the temple and again collecting tithes and having this being in this position closer to God. The Levites set themselves apart from everyone else by obedience to God. Many were called. Moses called to the whole camp. Few were chosen, the ones who answered the call. And it's that way with us. That's why Jesus said the chosen are those who answer the call. And so it was with them, and so it is with us. Well, also, when the Levites are numbered right before they leave the wilderness and go into the promised land, there's 23,000, and this numbering is exact if you look over there. And that's exactly the number of people that were killed and connected with either by the Levites by the plague at the golden calf. They didn't just replace the firstborn as having this privileged position of being part of the priestly ministry, but they also replaced those who had worshipped, those who were killed for worshiping the golden calf. And that's where we left off. Again, it was an action-packed episode. Well, today it's slowing down quite a bit. Today we're going to talk about Jethro and his part here with helping Moses continue on doing what God's called him to do. So we begin here in Exodus 34 and read verses 1 through 5. And the Lord said to Moses, "Hew you 2 stones of tablets of stone, like unto the first. I'll write upon these tables the words that were in the first tables, which you broke. And be ready in the morning, and come into the morning into Mount Sinai, and present yourself there to me at the top of the mount. And no man shall come up with you, neither shall any man be seen through all the mount. You shall let the flocks of the herds feed before that mount." And he hewed the 2 tables of stone like of the first, and Moses rose up early in the morning, and he went up to Mount Sinai, and as the Lord commanded him. He took in his hand the 2 tables of stone, and the Lord descended upon the cloud and stood with him there and proclaimed the name of the Lord. Okay, so Moses, when he broke those tablets, created a new problem. Those tablets are called the tablets of the testimony sometimes. And what they were is God's writing down the words that the people of Israel heard God speak out of the mountain. So they would believe God spoke. When Moses wasn't just making this stuff up and God was actually speaking to them, they'd believe him forever. So they were testimony, word for word, the same as those same 10 commandments. Well, Moses broke them. So those commandments laws are like a covenant. And the first covenant was broken by sin, which man broke. Moses being a man here, they were broken by sin. But now, notice he tells a man to hew out 2 blank tablets for him to write on. The others God himself had hewed out. The first one was a work of God alone, but now it's the work of God and man. And it's a picture of Messiah, who's fully God and fully man, bringing us a renewed covenant to replace the one that was broken by sin. And notice also he's going to write the same words in the second tablet that were in the first one. And so it is, the renewed covenant, as it literally says in Greek, kainos means renewed, not new. It's the same commandments, renewed in that how we keep them is not by the letter, but by the Spirit, as we talked about, when we talked about the Spirit, the heart, and the mediator. So once again, no one can come near the mount as before. So it'll repeat. And the Lord comes down there to meet him again. So and notice that the next, it says in the morning. So now this has been 41 days since Pentecost. So if somewhere if Pentecost typically on average of its range, middle range is right around the 1st of June. This would be around the middle. This would be around the middle of July, the first third of July, around July 10th or something like that. Okay, on our current calendar, just to give you an idea. Now continue on Exodus 34, verse 27 through 31. We're going to read the end of the matter, not going into the commandments that were given, that were told. They're a repeat. And the Lord said to Moses, "Write you these words, for the 10 of these words I've made a covenant with you, with Israel." He was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights, and he ate and drank, and he wrote upon the tables, the words of the covenant, the 10 commandments. And it came to pass when Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the two tables testimony in Moses' hand, when he came down with the mouth of Moses, knew not that the skin of his face shone while he talked with him. And when Aaron and all the children of Israel saw Moses, behold, the skin of his face shone. They were afraid to come near him. And Moses called unto them, and Aaron and all the rulers of the congregation returned unto him, and Moses talked with them. Okay, so what do we see here? We see here that it's again up there 40 days, and notice, write you these words, but then he, being the Lord, wrote the words of the Ten Commandments, only the 10 Commandments. Why these other words? Well, he's having them write again. Remember, he wrote on a scroll before they joined it with the people of the blood, and then he gave him more commandments. And perhaps Moses, we don't know what happened to him, but perhaps he hadn't written them down yet. But now he's writing them down. So he's writing them down on goats, on sheepskin or whatever. Okay, in some sort of, make some sort of scroll out of the rest of them. And again, they concern, we'll look at some of those commandments in a later day, but the majority of the ones in this go around concern, again, the ark, the tabernacle, and the priesthood. So Moses is writing all this down, but God himself writes the 10 Commandments. And so when he went down, but Moses' face is shining. So what's this again? No, wait, he has this 40 days and 40 nights. That reminds us speaks of, again, ahead of time, of Messiah. Is 40 days, 40 nights in the wilderness. Notice it's supernatural fast. The average person can go about 60 days before they die from starvation, but only about 3 or 4 before they die without water before they die. So this is, he didn't drink water. This is, again, God has supernaturally sustained him like he did before, and as he did Messiah in the wilderness. And if you remember, Messiah didn't get hungry until the end of the 40 days. So he's been sustained by God himself, doesn't feel any hunger except. But now, this, like Messiah on the Mount Transfiguration, where his entire body's showing in his clothing, or shining, Moses' face is shining also. And of course, everyone's afraid. But notice not everyone comes to him. Only Aaron and the rulers, kind of like not everyone came to Messiah. He just 3 of his disciples took 3 of them with him. And even other events, only his 12 saw. Sort of foreshadows that as well in that regard. Now we continue on in Exodus 4, in Exodus 10, read this following. He wrote on the tables, according to the first writing, the 10 Commandments which the Lord spoken to you in the midst of the fire in the day of the assembly. The Lord gave them to me. Okay, this is Moses speaking that he's the Lord. Again, the Lord's the one who wrote the 10 Commandments. All the other commandments Moses had to write down himself, and was up there so long writing them down, also perhaps discussing them, so he knows how to rightly teach them to other, so he understands how God wants them carried out. But these 10 Commandments are the ones they heard in the day of assembly. That day when they heard the voice of God. Okay, now we're going to continue on here with we're going to continue on here in Exodus 34, verse 32 and 35. And and see what Moses is doing now. He's received these commandments finally. He had to do it twice. And mind you, so 81 days have gone by. This is somewhere around the 20th. Again, if Pentecost is around the 1st of June, this is somewhere around the 20th of September by this point. 20th of August. I'm sorry, 20th of August around this point. All right, now let's continue on and read and see what happens. Afterwards, all the children of Israel came nigh, and they gave them in commandment all the Lord had spoken with him in Mount Sinai. So Moses had done speaking with him, he put a veil on his face. And when Moses went for the Lord to speak with him, he took the veil off. We came out until they came out. They came out, speaking to the children of Israel, which commanded. The children of Israel saw the face of Moses. The skin of Moses' face shined, as I say. And Moses put the veil upon his face again when he went in to speak with him being the Lord, Yahweh, however you like to pronounce that. Now, so let's talk about, I hadn't given the instructions on how to build the tabernacle yet. In fact, he was only down one day. They didn't have time to build it. This tent, just some tent he set up for meeting with the Lord in. Lord would meet him in there. And, Moses is meeting with the Lord face to face, and his face is shining every time. So he has to put the veil on, and then he takes it off when he's in there with the Lord, and then puts it back on when he comes outside. So, people aren't glared by by his face shining like the sun. So, but what's his purpose in all this? To give them commandments that the Lord spoke with him. So why does he keep going in here? He came out and spoke all the Lord commanded. He's getting more commandments for one thing, but he's also getting clarification of the ones he's already been given. So he's given them the commandments the Lord's given them. And this is what the Lord had told him to do and doing when he's up on the mount, as we see here in Deuteronomy 4, verse 14. The Lord commanded me at the time to teach you statutes and judgments, you might do them in the land where you go to possess it. Notice the statutes and commandments, doing them is connected to being in the land. And as I mentioned before, the commandments are given over a 40-year period. He doesn't have all of them yet. There's over 600, about 400 of those concerned with the tabernacle and the priesthood and those kind of things. But most of 400 only apply to a very small select group of people, really, in a lot of ways. But they haven't been given. And the last ones are actually given on the day Moses dies, and they began with the commandments for Passover on the day when they left Egypt. So these, they're given over this long period. But now he's teaching, and the purpose of these ones he was given initially was preparing them to enter the promised land. And we'll look at why they have to be prepared here. Moses explains this a little bit more in Deuteronomy 5 and verse 31 through 33. And he starts it with God speaking to him. But as for you, stand here by me, and I'll speak to you all the commandments and statutes of the judgment. You shall teach them, and they may do them in the land which I will give them to possess it. Now Moses speaking, he says, you shall observe therefore to do as your Lord God command you. You shall not turn aside to the left or the right. You shall walk in all the ways which your Lord God has commanded you, that you may live, and it may be well with you, may prolong your days in the land which you possess. Okay, so now we see again this connection between keeping the commandments and being in the land. And we'll see perhaps in a future lesson, this is actually part of the covenant. If they don't keep them, they can be thrown out of the land, and they didn't, and they were. The covenant is about is really an agreement to keep these commandments. But why? But why? Why is that so important? Why not leave them in the land, even if they, just punish them and not leave them in there? Why push them out, throw them out, as it were? Because that land is the promised land. That land is connected with them being a holy people above all, that's separated from all other people of the earth, that all other people that will show other people how to walk in the ways of the Lord. So, they got these things we talked about before, these commandments of custom. We looked at the Sabbath in particular, how it's only we looked at them in particular, how it's only required, under penalty of death for them to keep, because its purpose is to be a sign to separate them from all other ethnic groups. And why is he separating them? Because they're supposed to model how to walk in the ways of the Lord. So all the Gentiles will do the same thing and come to salvation. Well, if they're in a land that the Gentiles know marks them as that people, and they're not doing that, they're not teaching them how to walk in God's ways. They're talking about how to walk in disobedience. So, and that won't do. So that's why there's this connection here between the commandments and the land, and go and have it and possessing the land. And they got to be trained in those commandments first. So they come in, they know how to walk in his ways. And that brings us over to Jethro. We're going back to Exodus 18. I mentioned at the time we went to 19 that we'd skip this because it really wasn't in chronological order. And we'll show that in a minute. We can be certain of that. But let's just read what happens here in Exodus 18 in verses 1 through 4 about Jethro. When Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard all that God had done for Moses, for Israel's people, the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt, then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took Zipporah, Moses' wife, after he'd sent her back. Her two sons, of which the son of one was Gershom, for he said, I've been an alien in a strange land. And the name of the other was Eliezer. For the God of my father, said he, was mine help, and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. So, Jethro, first one thing we need to know about Jethro is he's a priest of Midian. And, some people think, well, that means he worships Midianites and so on and so forth. Or the worship the idols of the Midianites. The Midianites come around later and they have a bunch of idols. But notice how he's connected with God, how he heard what God had done for him in his Israel. Now he's bringing Moses' wife and kids back to him. And the reason he has them, if you remember when we talked about when Moses went to go down to Egypt, that he had not circumcised. Midian was likely circumcised. Jethro was probably circumcised, but he didn't have any sons, and his daughter didn't want the son circumcised. And God, was going to kill Moses if they didn't get Zipporah circumcised, and then he didn't. They relented because the covenant that he made with Abraham said, "In your house, whoever in your house is not circumcised, the penalty was death." And God was showing he meant business about this, going to carry it out. So Gershom, so his sons had to heal up. He had to get back to Egypt. And him and Zipporah not getting along great anyways at that point. So off he went. And now it's 8 months, about 8 months have passed, and he's got his wife and his kids back again. That's why Jethro's coming to visit him. Now we're going to continue. We're going to read some more about Jethro now in Exodus 18, verses 5 through 8. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and wife of Moses in the wilderness, were encamped at the Mount of God. And he said to Moses, I, your father-in-law Jethro, am coming to you, and your wife and your two sons with her. And Moses went out to meet his father-in-law and did obeisance and kissed him. And they asked each other their welfare. And they came into the tent. And Moses told his father-in-law all the Lord had done unto Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake, and all the travail that came upon them, by the way, and how the Lord delivered them. Okay, so notice where Jethro finds him at, the Mount of God, Horeb, Sinai. As we saw, Jethro, we'll see, knows where this place is. And we'll talk about that a little later, but and perhaps he wasn't sure where Moses was up to this point, because he went down to Egypt and the unexpected of crossing across the Red Sea, and then went camped several places before he came to this place as father-in-law was familiar with. So, and it says did obeisance. That means Moses probably lay down face first in front of Jethro, because over and over again you'll notice he's referred to as father-in-law more than anything else. And that position of authority, Moses is submitting to it. And now he's telling Moses, Midian were told when God destroyed the gods of Egypt, It was heard throughout. He undoubtedly heard about that. Maybe he heard about the Dead Sea. Perhaps we're just, perhaps the Egyptians probably tried to keep that quiet so their army enemies wouldn't know they weren't without an army for a while. But Moses is filling him in, fills him in on all the details. Now let's look at Jethro's reaction to that as we continue on Exodus 18, verses 9 through 12. And Jethro rejoiced for all the goodness which the Lord had done to Israel, whom he had delivered out of the hand of the Egyptians. And Jethro said, Blessed be the Lord, who has delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians, and out of the hand of Pharaoh, who has delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. I know the Lord is greater than all gods, from the thing wherein they dealt proudly, he was above them. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took a burnt offering and sacrifice for God. And Aaron came, and all the elders of Israel, to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law before God. So, Jethro's throwing a party here, okay? Basically, he's making sacrifices. He's calling, and again, they were in the tent. That's probably the tent of meeting, not the tabernacle, which hadn't been built yet. Okay, but the tent. He's a priest of God. No, we can be certain he's a priest. He's a priest of God because he made burnt offerings for God. He's one of the priests of the Midianites. The Midianite idols they turned to eventually. And you'll see why I say turn to eventually later. But he acknowledged. Remember, it was judgment against the gods of Egypt. He's now seen proof of that, or heard proof of that from Moses. So there's this great rejoicing. However, party's about to be over because he's about to notice a problem. And that's what we pick up here in Exodus 18 in verses 13 through 18. And it came to pass on the morrow that Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood by Moses from morning unto evening. And when Moses' father-in-law saw what he did to the people, he said, Why is this thing you do to the people? Why sit you alone? All the people stand by you from morning to evening. Moses said this father-in-law, because the people come unto me to inquire of God. When they have a matter, they come to me, and I judge between one another, and I do make them known the statutes of God and his laws. His father-in-law said, the thing that you do is not good. You'll surely wear away both you and your people that are with you. This thing is too heavy for you. You are not able to perform it alone. Okay, so notice now what Moses sitting there, and they're all standing from morning to evening. I mean, from sun up to sundown, Moses doing this, and the people are staying there. And remember, there's 600,000. There's around 600,000 men, 20 to 60 years of age, and there's the women, the children, and the men, and men that are older than that. And there's probably 3 million people here. Moses is doing it all by himself. If you think if this is like a kingdom, Moses is the king and everyone else is commoners. And he's doing it, and he's doing it all himself, and it's going to wear everyone out. It's wearing away because the people, they have to wait to have their day in court, as it were. Moses is going all day, and the line just never ends. And people are having to stay there one day, stand in line 2 days. Because the line is building up quicker than Moses can handle it, okay, and possibly do these judgments. But he is supposed to be making known the statutes and judge of God and his law. And that's not what's good. That part's good. What's not good is the way Moses is going about this, as it were, having a kingdom with only a king and commoners and no one in between. So let's look at what Jethro tells Moses to do to fix this problem. And by the way, that's before I get into that, this is how we know this occurred after that, because Moses the first time he didn't have the commandments, or he had them on the 3rd day, but then he went up on the mount, stayed 6 days, and on the 7th day was called up. Didn't have any time to teach these commandments and do what we see here. Came down, the golden calf Went back up the next day, we saw. Didn't have any time. Now, after he come down the second time, he finally has time. So that's when we can be certain 18 occurred at this point, okay? Because he wasn't having time to do this judging. And Jethro appears to be there the day after he came down, or some point after that. So, or he took a day off to visit with Jethro. I don't know, but perhaps. But either way, this is somewhere now, in that realm I talked about, late August. Okay. Now here's Jethro's advice to him. Jethro seeing the problem. Now here's how he tells Moses why he's going to fix it. Hearken to me unto my voice. I'll give you counsel, and God shall be with you. For you be you for the people to Godward, that you may bring the cause unto God. And he shall teach them ordinances and laws, and they shall show them the way wherein they must walk, and the work they must do. Moreover, you shall provide out of all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness, and place such over them. Be rulers of thousands, of rulers of hundreds, rulers of fifties, and rulers of tens. Let them judge the people in all seasons, and it shall be that every great matter they shall bring unto you, very small matter they shall judge, so it shall be easier for yourself, and they shall bear the burden with you. If you shall do this thing, and God commands you so, then you shall be able to endure, and all people shall also go to their place in peace. Okay, remember, Jethro's a priest of God, as we've shown. And notice how he's talking on God's behalf here. I mean, notice this. I'll give you counsel, and God will be with you. He's telling that counsel's from God. God commands you so. It's kind of a bold statement to make, unless, it's true. He's not just speaking out of his head here. These are the words of God through Jethro. He is a priest of God, a mediator, just like Moses. So what's he going to do? He's going to tell everyone, he's going to teach them all the laws and commandments, the congregation, perhaps, on Sabbaths or perhaps every day, since they're just hanging out. After they collect the manna and stuff, they don't got a lot to do. And he's also going to get some helpers, okay? And now we're going to get not just a king and commoners, but a nobility layer as well. And notice not all the nobles are equal. There's some are thousands, some are hundreds, some are fifties, and some are tens, rulers over those size of groups, okay? And they're going to help Moses in this thing. They're going to take the easy and the hard ones he's going to take. So now he's got that layer, this kingdom here, as it were, has a king. Moses is illustrating that. These rulers, these rulers who are going to help him in this, and they're the nobility, and then the common people. And see, that's that way with the kingdom of God. As we showed, Jesus said Yeshua, however you like, said that those who keep the least commandments will be great in the kingdom, the nobility. Those who don't keep and break will be least in the kingdom, the commoners. That same patterns here. And the ones who are keeping and notice the qualifications. They gotta be able men, but able. That means what? They gotta be physically able to be judging all day during the day like this. They gotta be mentally acute. They can't have dementia or something like that or going on. That's just their first qualification, but that's not enough. They have to fear God. They got to be afraid to not obey God and keep these commandments. And they got to be afraid to show favoritism and so on and so forth. They got to be men of truth, men who hate lying. And, will not put up with it. They got to hate covetousness. They got to hate people wanting other people's stuff. And the main thing about themselves is them hating them, not wanting real stuff, them not being subject to bribery. So there's some qualifications, and there's some qualifications for us as well. Our sins are forgiven. Our sins are forgiven, and we're going to be judged. We're going to be judged for what we've done, everything we've done, good and evil. And what we've done, if we're part of the family of God, Messiah's blood has taken away our sin, but our position as kingdom is going to be partly decided by our faithfulness to what he tells us to. And as we notice, even in this upper layer, there's different levels inside of it. So, and it's up, and again, it's up to these people whether they qualified or not, except for maybe the able part. The rest of it is definitely within their ability. So that's his great advice, and it is great advice. And let's look at Moses' response to that. Exodus 20 and Exodus 18, verse 24 through 27 read the following. So Moses hearkened to the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he said. And Moses chose able men out of all Israel, made them heads of the people, rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50, and rulers of tens. They judged the people at all seasons. The hard case they brought unto Moses, but every small matter they judged themselves. And Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went his way into his own land. Okay, so what do we see here? Well, what we see here is he took Jethro's advice, worked great, but then Jethro left. He went back home. And that would appear to be the end of Jethro. But remember, this is while he's still at this is only about 6 months at the most after he arrived at Mount Sinai. Okay. It's probably not even that long. It's probably more like 4 months. Okay, so 4 months after he arrives at Mount Sinai, Jethro goes home. Goes back to his own land. Now we're going to spend the rest of this time talking about Jethro, and we're going to talk about first. We're going to look at his past. Who is this man? Why is he able to talk to Moses on God's behalf? Except, well, here's what we see in Genesis 25, verse 1 through 7. We start learning about where he came from, because remember, he's a priest of Midian. And what we read is this: Then again, Abraham took a wife, and her name was Keturah, and she bare him Zechram and Yakshan and Medan and Midian and Ishbak and Shua. And Shua begat Sheva and Dedan. And the sons of Yakshan, I'm sorry. And the sons of Dedan were Asherim, Letashim, and Limim. And the sons of Midian, Ephah, Ephter, Hanok, Abadah, Eldadah. These are the children of Keturah. And he gave all he had to his son Isaac, unto Isaac. But the sons of the concubines, which Abraham had, he gave gifts and sent them away from Isaac his son while he yet lived, eastward into the east country. And these are the days of Abraham's life which he lived, 115 and 15 years. 170, so he's 175 here. All right. Now, remember, again, he took a wife, and that wife, this is after Sarah died. Sarah died when he was 137. Yeah, when he's 137. And this happens. The sending away is right before he dies, 38 years later. And in that 38-year gap, he has 6 more children by Keturah. I mean, he was as good as dead, the Bible tells us, with respect to having children. I mean, when God fixed him up, he really fixed him up, okay? He really healed him up there. Well, Midian, and remember somehow saying things about his sons. Well, Abraham, he had to circumcise everyone in his household, including the servants. These sons were all circumcised. They're all known about that. But also, God had said he chose Abraham because he had teach them to walk in the statutes and commandments of God. And God made some of his statutes and commandments known to Abraham, and he taught his sons. Now, it's obvious that this took with Midian, because his children's names, Hanok, dedication, Abidah, referring my father, reference to God, another reference to God. All these are connected with God and his plan, okay? All of that's the way he named his sons. So now Midian has gotten this, and he's moved east and eastward from where the promised land, which the land of Midian, as we discussed before, where Horeb is around the northeast part of modern Saudi Arabia. So it all fits, okay? So there is, these sons are all grown, and he sends them out. Now we're going to jump to where, now we're going to go forward to where Moses meets Jethro in Exodus 2, verses 16 through 21. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. They came and drew water and filled the troughs of water of their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. And they came to Reuel, their father, and he said, "How have you come home? How have you come so soon today?" They said, "A shepherd delivered us out of the hands of the an Egyptian delivered us out of the hands of the shepherds and drew water enough for us and watered the flock." He said to his daughters, "Where is he? Why is it that you've left the man? Call him and eat bread." And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses Zipporah, his daughter. Okay, so now he's a priest of God, as we've shown. This has been passed down to him. And he's probably the oldest son, because that was typically, like I said, along with the birthright and the blessing, so is the acting as priest of the family also fell on the oldest son, as I'd mentioned. So, so he does this, and he has these 7 daughters, and Zipporah is probably his oldest. As the custom was, we saw before, as we saw with Jacob, the oldest, they married him, oldest daughter to get married in the next one, and so on and so forth, down to the last one. So that was the custom. So Zipporah is probably the oldest daughter. Notice there's no mention of having any sons. Notice his name. His name here isn't Jethro at this point. It's in this passage. It's Reuel. That connection with God again. So, and notice now Moses is an Egyptian. He's dressed like an Egyptian. He was raised up in the house of Pharaoh. He was only with his mother till he was weaned. And we know he left he chose the people of God with the pleasures of Egypt. And so, it appears pretty likely from the text we've read that Moses at one point worshiped the gods of Egypt as well, and so on and so forth. Just recently came to some revelation of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, perhaps remembering what his mother had sung to him as a baby or child or whatever. And he's now here in Egypt. He tried to take matters in his own hands and ended up here in Midian. So he doesn't really, he knows about God, but he doesn't really know how to worship God right, and so on and so forth. But he's got this, but this priest of Midian is there now to train him. And notice how Moses is content. As far as Moses is concerned, this could have been the end of the story of Moses. And he had been happy. He was happy living with this guy. He's worshiping God. He's worshiping God. He's got a whole new life. Plenty of sunshine and exercise and so on and so forth. And, he's connected with he's connected with someone who can teach him about the living God. But, then it all comes to an end, as we see here in Exodus 3:1. Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro's father-in-law, the priest of Midian. He kept the flock led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb. Remember, Horeb and Sinai, both two names of the same mountain. All right, notice it's the backside of the desert. All right, what's that mean? It means Jethro had different land he'd take the flocks to, and the furthest from his house is the backside. It's like when I grew up, the farm I grew up in, we had a tract of land that was furthest from all the buildings, and we called it the back 40. Okay, this is the same ideal, but it's inside the territory of Jethro, inside where he takes his flocks. He knows where this is, so this is why he knows where Moses is at the mountain. Okay. This is why, he give him back his daughter, his wife and sons, and deliver them, and because he knows where it's at, knows how to get there, knows how to get home. But 40 years of training was all preparation for what occurred here. This, when the burning bush occurred, Moses brings us up to where we were with Moses with Jethro coming to bring back the daughters. So, deliverance from Egypt, etc. But that's not the last time we see Jethro. We're going to continue on and look at the next place we see him here in Numbers 10, verse 29 through 33. And Moses said to Hobab, the son of Raguel, the Midianite, Jethro's Moses' father-in-law, we are journeying to the place which the Lord said, I will give it you. Come you with us, and we will do you good, for the Lord has spoken good concerning Israel. He said unto him, I will not go, but I will depart to my own land and to my kindred. He said, leave us not, I pray you, for as much you know how we are to encamp in the wilderness, and you may be to us eye instead of eyes. This shall be, if you go with us, yea, it shall be that what goodness the Lord shall do to us, the same we will do unto you. They departed from the mount of the Lord 3 days' journey. The ark of the covenant went before them 3 days' journey to search out a resting place for them. Okay, so notice the timing of this. This is right before they leave the mount of the Lord. They're there. They're there. We'll see for they're there for about a year. So this is 6 or more months since Jesse, Hobab, Rule, same guy, went home. He's now come back, perhaps he knows they're getting ready to leave, to tell him farewell. And he's just going to go home and retire and be among his family. That's his plan. But Moses pleads with him here. And perhaps Moses had perceived that perhaps the guy thought he was, kind of would be more of a hindrance than a help, and was owed and whatever. Because he's probably older than Moses. Moses is 80 years old. He's probably 100 or more. But notice what he says. He's not. He says you're going to be. Moses appeals to him, saying you're going to be a great help to us. Basically says we're out in the wilderness, and most of us don't know what we're doing. Moses does because he was out there for 40 years, but most of them don't know, and they're not familiar with the wilderness, and perhaps that may be true about Moses himself as well. The actual lay of the land, as it were. So he appeals to him and tells him how needed he is, how what a great blessing it'd be to them, and and then they'll bless him by making him part. He'll be part of the people of God as well if they do this. Now, when it says they departed, it doesn't mean necessarily Moses' father-in-law. It means the congregation of Israel departed. Whether they include his father-in-law or not is not clear right here. So we're going to jump ahead and get some clarity from here in Judges 1, verse 16. And the children of the Kenite, Moses' father-in-law, went up out of the city of the palm trees with the children of Judah under the wilderness of Judah, which lies in the south of Arad, and they went and dwelt among the people. Okay, notice the Kenite, the Kenite is a reference to Moses' father-in-law. It's yet another name for him. And Kenite means descendant of Ken. There could be more than one guy named that. Ken, by the way, in Hebrew is yes. I guess he was a yes man. So, anyways, he's called that because he himself was a descendant of Ken, not that he was that. But he was the Kenite, and his children are the children of the Kenite. And that name's going to stick with his descendants later, as we'll see. But where are they at? They're with the children of Judah. And they're traveling with them, and they're part of the children of Judah. And they're in the territory of Judah. It says Judges 1, the land's already been divided, except. Okay. And they're dwelling among them. So they're dwelling among the people of Judah. And no indication so far that they have any cities of their own or anything. But they're getting to live in the land, and they're getting to enjoy this blessing the people of Judah are enjoying. And they prove themselves to be valuable once again here in Judges 4, verse 11. Now, Eber the Kenite, which is the father of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, had severed himself from the Kenites and pitched his tent in the plain of Zanaim, which is by Kadesh. Okay, this Heber the Kenite, notice he severed himself from the other Kenites. And now notice he's pitched his tent. He's not, he's living a nomadic lifestyle like Bedouin today. By Kadesh, which is in the southern part of Israel, the southern part of Judah. Again, that same area we looked at earlier, we looked at a moment ago. But the important thing about this man is he is the husband of Jael or Yael, and she's the one who kills Sisera, who, if I remember right, led an army of Midianites that had 900 chariots of iron. But anyways, Sisera is killed by his wife. So, once again, we see them being allies of the people of God, in league with God as well, and being a blessing to the people of God. And that blessing does not go unnoticed. And we see that here in 1 Samuel 15, verse 6. And Saul said to the Kenites, depart and go and get you down from the Amalekites, lest I destroy you with them. For you showed kindness to all the children of Israel when they came up out of Egypt. So the Kenites departed from among the Amalekites. Okay. So notice here, they're again, they appear not to have any cities of their own yet. They're and the Amalekites are in that area. They're inside the territory of Judah. Judah's not taking all the land, not driven all the enemies out. And remember, the Amalekites were those who attacked when Israel was weak, when Israel was in a weakened position. They've been lacking. They needed water and so on and so forth. They attacked Israel. They didn't attack their army. They attacked the women, the children, and the elderly, and the feeble, and those kind of, just like they did. Just like Hamas did on October 7th. And God said, and remember, we talked about the war with Amalek and how Amalek has never been destroyed completely, and how he showed up, end up in place like Persia and stuff, and how Hamas is related to them. Well, they're out there living among them, perhaps because they need pasture land. They rented it from the Amaleks or Amalekites or whatever the case is. But notice there's a distinction between these enemies of God and these allies of the people of Israel, these worshipers of God. And notice he talks to them as if they had done it, but they didn't do this. When they came out of Egypt, this was 500 years later, it was Jethro and his family that did this. Jethro either had more kids, or these are these are children through his daughters. Again, the firstborn would be counted as his descendant of each daughter. Firstborn to each daughter would be counted as his descendant, which would include Gershom, by the way, Moses' firstborn. And Eliezer would have been counted as Moses' heir. So we see they're still there. They're still allies of the people of God, strong allies. Now, we next thing we read about them is here in 1 Samuel 27:10. And Achish said, whither have you made a road today? And David said, against the south of Judah, against the south of the Jerahmeelites, and against the south of the Kenites. All right. Anyway, so where have you made a road day? He's saying, where have you been today? Where have you traveled to? And David gives an answer, but it's not totally, he's a little misleading. He did go to the south of Judah, in the south, in this area of the Jerahmeelites and the Jerahmeelites and the Kenites, who again, notice they're close to Judah. They went and killed the Amalekites and those around them who were living near them. And Achish is the king of the Philistines, who David's allied himself with in a short while and is reporting to here. But notice how the Kenites are, again, allies of Judah, tied to Judah, as well as the Jerahmeelites. Now, we're going to go forward a little bit more. See the look at our last time about these descendants of Jethro, the Kenites. And here's what we read in 1 Samuel 30, verse verses 26 through 7. And when David came to Ziklag, he sent the spoil of the elders of Judah, even to his friends, saying, Behold, a present for you, the spoil of the enemies of the Lord. To them which were in Bethel, and to them which were in the south of Ramoth, and to them which are in Jethro, and to them which are in Aaror, and to them that are Shiplo, and to them of Eshtemoa, and to them of Rachel, and to them of the cities of the Jerahmeelites, and to them which were in the cities of the Kenites, to them which were in Hormah, to them which were in Chorashan, and to them which were in Achla, and to them which were in Hebron, to all the places where David and his men were wont to haunt. Wontons, King James, is places where they stayed, where they were known to stay, where they, like to hang out, people might say. And notice these are his friends. And once he sent them Ziklag, the Amalekites attacked Ziklag, took the wives. David recovered the wives and destroy the Amalekites who'd done this completely, and now he's sharing the spoils of war with his allies. And among those allies, I want you to notice the cities of the Kenites. The Kenites finally have cities, we see. Now they're settled down. Okay, and they're given a place. And perhaps, because Judah had not conquered everything, and not conquered everything yet until David came along, they were perhaps given some of these newer cities that David had conquered in the south part of Judah. So the Kenites are grafted in, as it were, to Judah. They're not descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They're descendants of Abraham, Midian, and Jethro, okay? But they worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They're keeping all the commandments required to be in the law. And now they're being given a place in there as if they were descendants. They've been circumcised, which, according to the law, says they went circumcised as counted as if they were native born. And that's so they are. And they're just absorbed in as part of the people of Judah with their own cities at this point. Okay, so they're staunch allies and continual help to Israel throughout their history that's given us in the Bible. But there's a bit of a problem. There's a confusion with another group called Kenites. Another group, as it were, remember, Ken means yes in Hebrew. Keni would be of belonging to yes, or yes men if you're men, literally. But this is a bad yes men. They're saying yes to evil, not yes to good. Okay, and we're going to read about them here in Genesis 15, verses 16 through 21. And in the fourth generation they shall come here again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. And it came to pass when the sun went down, it was dark, there was a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces. In the same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, Under your seed I've given you this land, from the river of Jordan unto the great river, the river Euphrates. The Kenites and the Kenizzites and the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Raphaims and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Girgashites and the Jebusites. 10 listed here. And notice the Rephaim were giants. We discussed before. The Canaanites and some of these are also Canaanite tribes, but again, like with happened with Yavin, is actually the father of of Elisha, who the Greeks came from. He has some brothers as well. But Yavin's actually often used of him because he's the oldest. Well, the same thing's going on here. Canaanites is used of one of the tribes, perhaps the most predominant one, the oldest son of Canaan. And many of these others are Canaanites. So the Kenites are either they're Canaanites. We'll just say it, and we'll show that in a moment. They're Canaanites. There's some branch of the Canaanites, okay? These Kenites, and they're bad people. And notice it's Genesis 15. It's Abram, not Abraham. This is before Abraham's name was changed, okay? This is before, this is right before the announcement of the birth of, of Isaac and so on and so forth. He's still Abram here. So this before way before Midian's born, hundreds of years before the yes man that the yes man that Jethro came from was born. Okay, so it's not the same group at all. It's a different group of people. And that's important we understand this. And they're enemies of God. And that's important to understand, particularly when you're looking here in Numbers 24, verses 21 through 12 through 22. He looked upon the Kenites, and he took up this parable and said, be strong your dwelling place, you that put your nest in the rock. Nevertheless, the Kenites shall be waste, and Assyria shall carry you away captive. These Kenites are not, it's not the sense of Jethro. That name Kenite's not even applied to them. It's not even applied to him, even. It's not even applied to his descendants as being called Kenites till about 30 or 40 years after Balaam here gives his gives his word, gives the word of the Lord. He was a real prophet of God who just turned from God, and this all came to pass. But that Canaanite tribe or branch of the Canaanites that's going to be wasted. And they had a thing like kind of like Cheyenne Mountain where NORAD's located, carved in this big stone mountain, and their nest is in the rock. They're up there up high, and they're counting on that no one can get up there to them. They're high up on this bluff, except, and they're counting on all that, but nonetheless, it's not going to do them any good. They're going to be Assyrians going to carry them away captive someday, which doesn't happen. Which happens when the Assyrians come to take away the northern kingdom captivity. So their days are numbered, but it's not the people. The sense of Jethro again is talking about here plainly. He's talking about this evil branch of Canaanite tribes, and we'll end with how we can be certain about this and how also the statement God made concerning the Kenites, these wicked Kenites, these descendants of Canaan, was not racism at all. It was about their worshiping false gods and the like. And we can be certain of that because of 1 Chronicles 2:55. In the families of the scribes that dwelt at Yahweh, the Cherethites and the Shimeites and the Sukkothites, these are the Kenites which came to Hamath, that came of Hamath, the father of the house of Rechab. Rechab or Rahab. She's the one with the when Jericho fell, her family was spared. Hamath was her father. And notice her father is a Kenite. And we're told there in the other place I reference that she's a Canaanite. Okay. Jericho appears to have been a city of the Kenites back in the day. That evil branch, this evil Canaanites. Well, then why wasn't she killed if it was just wipe out all the Canaanites? Because by faith she hid the spies. By faith, she had faith in the living God. She had turned from wickedness to righteousness. Not just her, but her family as well. And notice the reward they get. Here in Chronicles, they're part of the scribes. The scribes' job was to keep part of their job was to keep the word of God going. A very important job. They're given a meaningful, great position and the kingdom of God, despite their ancestry, because it was never about ancestry. I mean, they're being elevated among people who are actually physical descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because they turned towards God and were loyal to him. And so it is with us. It doesn't matter what your ancestry was, or how your family was, or like that. You have the opportunity with God. You are your own individual to have a great place in his kingdom. And just as Jethro and his descendants, it's tied to you walking in his ways. So I encourage you to walk in his ways, all of your days. Until next time, shalom.